This is when she's our president who is okay. So there's the closed caption, like me and so many others.
The
President taking bold, meaningful action. Stop the spread of ghost guns.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my great honor to introduce the strongest gun sense commander-in-chief ever to hold office, President Joe Biden.
Also,
enter Creepy Joe.
She hugs him. She initiated the hug.
Yeah.
But now look how weird this is.
The embrace, man.
Look, look how weird this is.
I don't. Oh, that's.
Look at how weird that is.
It's so creepy, dude.
Look at how weird it is.
Ah.
Yes.
It's so creepy. Like you're waiting. It's
Yeah, like
it
I
is
said,
so uncomfortable, man.
She initiated the hug. He had a hand out. He had a hand for a handshake.
Yep.
She hugged him. So I'm not gonna let's be super honest about it because.
And she went in for. I mean, she hugged
gave him the
man.
hug, and he hugged her. And then when
then
she
got
went
weird.
to let go, he stopped and he talked to her for a little bit too long. I think it's just weird. It looks weird.
Yeah, man. Like the line of creepy. You crossed the line. You crossed the fucking line.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about what he actually said. Now that we provided enough context, enough commentary on the scenario. So, they announced a four-phase gun plan that they have going on.
Oh, God.
And so we'll go over these 4 phases. We'll talk about some other stuff that he said. Gun regulations.
I got the fact sheet pulled up, too.
Excellent. They're going to criminalize the ownership of ghost guns, and
criminalize the ownership of ghost guns.
yeah, that's the long-term intent.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make it illegal to sell ghost guns without a serial number or a background check,
Which then doesn't make them a ghost gun.
and it does not make them a ghost gun. And the way that they I'm going to go over these 4 things, and we'll talk about the way they define a ghost gun.
Okay.
One is they're going to go after rogue gun dealers. And a big thing that they said is 5% of gun dealers sold 90% of these guns, right? So let's break that down a little bit,
Okay.
right? One of the major types of quote-unquote ghost guns that you could buy. I'm going to call it a home manufactured gun because that's what it is, right? Ghost gun is a political term. This is a gun you make at home. The ATF even calls them primitive manufactured firearms. They don't even call them ghost guns. That's a political term. Ghost gun is a political term because it doesn't mean anything. It's a primitive manufactured firearm because it wasn't made quote with gunsmithing material, quote unquote, which is kind of bullshit anyway.
It's 2020, bro.
It's
or 2022.
Anything is gunsmithing material.
Yeah.
So
3D printers are a thing.
right. So anyway. They're going to go after rogue gun dealers. Says that 5% of gun dealers sold 90% of these guns. So one of the major type of primitive manufactured firearms is called a P80, right? That's the brand of this gun. So you buy them. You can buy them in stores, in gun stores that sell them, but the company is called P80, Polymer 80. You can go to polymer80.com and buy a PA from them and have it sent to your house. So if you can buy it direct from the manufacturer instead of paying a markup in a store, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
So it only makes sense
Capitalism.
that the vast majority of P80s will be sold through polymer80.com, making them one of those 5% of gun dealers. They're the ones that make them. It doesn't make sense to buy them anywhere else if you can buy it from the dealer, because that's where the source is. If you go to a regular gun store, they may or may not have the model that you want, because they have models for all the different like popular handguns. So you can get a Glock one or a SIG one, it's a M&P Shield, all those things, all the different kinds of popular firearms. You can get a clone version of that in this Polymer 80 fashion.
That's what I was just going to ask. It's like it's a cloned version of it. It's just like, this is what it looks like, and you're buying it from us.
Yes, it looks a little bit different. You can tell, if you're into guns, it's very easy to tell, because the magwell, or like the trigger guard, right, is shaped different. It has a more intense scoop on the front, and it has a scoop cut on the bottom. That's like the definitive Polymer 80 telltale sign, is the way that the trigger guard is shaped. And that's the easiest way to tell.
So for those non-gun enthusiasts, let me just ask this question then. So essentially that's like why you can buy a AR-15 that isn't necessarily made from Armalite. You can buy it made from the Colt factory, or the I don't know, whatever other manufacturers make that gun, that style, or that model, if you will. And so the P80 is just a model that was essentially created. That model was created by polymer 80.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're clones of all these guns, and this is the part that I'm talking about. Is this trigger guard? Is it has a more intense scoop in the front? I have a lot of mine, so it's a little bit harder. And the bottom has a scoop cut, and that's for your fingers to rest. That's a very common aftermarket thing that people will do with low receivers. If they're going to send it in for stippling work, which is the texture on here, it's very common for them to also have an undercut scooped out of their trigger guard just to have a place to set your other
Oh
hand.
yeah, that
Very
makes sense.
common.
The way you
So
sit.
if you're gonna buy a Piety, they already come like that. So they
Interesting.
come like that. They're a little bit blockier.
That's
they're
a
not
good model.
They're not quite as round. Yeah, a lot of people like them. A lot of people like them. And the definitive thing is you have to finish the bottom part where the trigger goes. You have to drill that part out and then put everything together. There's a couple holes you have to drill out. So Piety kits come with like the drill bits and stuff that you need, the internals and all that stuff.
So all you really need is a drill press.
So you need just a drill.
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't even need a drill press. You need a drill and to be able to drill straight down. That's it. It helps to have a drill press, but you don't need a drill press. And that's like the same thing with the jigs for the AR-15's lower. So you could just do it with a hand router. You can do it, if you have a CNC machine, then you can also do it in there. You can like get all the measurements and stuff and do it itself. Or you can do it yourself with a hand router or with a drill press. It's a little bit harder with that, but
Yeah.
it's all
movement.
the same deal. So this statistic thing that they're doing with the 5% and 90% is just totally a game of numbers. It's a game of words.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as when they're presenting dangers with COVID-19 and the shot, right? You're X amount or X times more likely to get COVID if you don't have the vaccine. You're X times more likely to die from COVID if you don't have the vaccine.
Yeah.
That's across the board.
That's
not
false equivalency.
exactly. It's not. That's your. I think like they call like your relative risk, right? That's not your actual risk. That's not
Yeah.
comparative between a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old.
Yeah.
It's because most people who are dying are 80 years old. And so these statistics, they don't fit to what they're saying. And they do a lot of that with and I'll go over this a little bit later. They go over a lot of that with the acquisition numbers for ghost guns. As they'll say, it went up 200% in the last 2 years. But if you got 7 ghost guns one year and then you got 30 of them the next year,
That percentage looks
that's
better
a
than
250% increase from what you went the year before.
Yeah.
So while it's only 30 guns or whatever, it's a 250% increase in the amount of ghost guns that we saw last
yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So that's a very big number. It sounds very scary. That is very common in this discussion.
I like to equate it with like in my zone is like hunting and stuff like that. There are X amount of people, you're a hiker or something like that, right? There's only X amount of people that die by bear attacks every year, right? And you're like, oh yeah, that's one in, 10,000, one in, I don't know, 100,000, whatever the number is. It's like, well, yeah, but most people don't put themselves in a position to be attacked by a bear.
Right.
But the people that do are a very, very finite number. And so the actual risk is, in this case, inversely, way higher than it's technically reported. And in the world of, these primitive home manufactured firearms, there's only a small group of people that are doing these things. There's, like you said, there was 7 made last year and now there's 30 made this year.
Right.
It's a much more scary percentage when you just compare the two numbers than actually say the two numbers, because you put 7 compared to 30, nobody really gives a shit.
Right.
When you say 250%, that's a big scary number.
And when you start to look at those numbers, because it is true that the amount of ghost guns that police are picking up in general is increasing, right? It's also true that the places where they're picking up more ghost guns are the places with stricter gun regulations, where it's harder to get a traditional firearm. People will go through the work to go the route to get a kit and finish it themselves. We've also seen things like they're calling, I'll have to find on Instagram, that it's a gun the police called the Smith & Methson, because it was made out of like a piece of pipe and there was a quarter on the back that you pulled back as the hammer, and there was like a drill bit that was used as the firing pin. It's something someone completely 100% handmade in their house.
It's a Fallout crafted gun.
Yeah,
right?
And it's like, those are very different things,
Yeah.
because that used to be the world of homemade firearms, and now that it's not that way, you don't have to go through all of that work, but it's still work.
Yeah.
More than what most people are willing to go through, unless you have project means, that people are having, or you have malicious means. If you're trying to do something bad and you don't want anyone to know about it, you are willing to go through that work. If your intent is already to break the law, you are willing to go through that work to make sure that someone can't track the firearm.
Yeah.
Because your intent is already to break the law.
And to that point, like the work to do that process to get that home manufactured firearm, because of the breakthroughs in technologies these days, the barrier to entry to get into that is way lower than it ever used to be. So like that has to factor into the weight of the amount. You have a combination scenario here where you have multiple reasons that might be coming into play when you're talking about the increased number of these home manufactured firearms being recovered on crime scenes and stuff like this. So like there's a lot of factors here. It's not because, like you were just saying, like it doesn't necessarily mean it's for nefarious means. It just means that people can make them easier nowadays and more affordable than ever before. So there's going to be more.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with that.
Welcome to the south of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you